The February refines are finally here, and it's an interesting batch, so let's just jump straight in and get right to it. First off, let's get some of the garbage out of the way, and unfortunately we're going to have to talk about Sigrun's refine first, and this refine is honestly underwhelming. So first we have, if unit is within 3 spaces of an ally, plus 4 to all stats, and reduces damage from foe's first attack by 40%. And then again, if unit's HP is greater than 25%, we get another attack speed, defensive res plus X this time, but X equals the number of allies within 3 spaces times 2 plus 4. So you get a max of 10. And then after combat, she restores 7 HP to herself. Okay, so that's some interesting effects. She can essentially get up to plus 14 to all stats, which is very solid. And then some damage reduction, which is decent, and some healing. Honestly though, this is not enough nowadays. This is just not anywhere near where it needs to be. First of all, she doesn't have any type of flat stat. There's no slaying, there's no attack plus 3, defense plus 4, whatever, right? There's nothing there. That's kind of weird already. And then what role is this unit really supposed to fulfill, right? Is she supposed to be a tank? Is that why she's getting stats and damage reduction and healing? And if that's the case, she doesn't have IO's shield, so she's gonna get destroyed by like the million archers in the meta. And then also the stats are based off allies within 3 spaces. As a flyer, you're gonna have maybe what? 1 ally within 3 spaces, maybe 2 at the most, and that's just not enough. The healing after combat's nice, but this unit just doesn't have a place in any game mode. She's not gonna be able to tank in Ether Raids, she's not gonna be able to Gale Force in Ether Raids, she's gonna be terrible in Ether Raids defense, and she's unusable in Summoner Duels. So unfortunately, Sigrun just got really the short end of the stick, and this is not gonna make her meta or good even, in my opinion. You're probably better off running the Arcane Lance. Okay, next up, let's talk about Norne. Norne's a big fan favorite. Let's see if she actually got a decent refine or not. So if effect against flying foes, pretty typical. At start of combat, if her HP is greater than or equal to 25%, another plus 4 to all stats during combat. And then also if the foe's range equals 2, so if they're like an archer or a mage, she inflicts attack and speed minus 5 on foe and neutralizes their bonuses. So like things like plus 6 attack, right? All those kind of like visible buffs you would normally get. And then her actual refine is if unit is within 3 spaces of an ally, she gets another plus 4 to all stats during combat. She inflicts guard on them, and then she heals 7 HP after combat. I don't know why they do this thing where like they want to put the same effect on a lot of different refines in the same batch, but that's what they did here. Either way, overall the refine is decent, right? You're getting a bunch of stats, you're getting plus 8 to all stats, and then another attack and speed minus 5, which is essentially you're getting plus 8 attack, plus 13 speed, defense, and resistance, which is solid. She definitely needs the stats in order to catch up with all the competition, right? Neutralizing foe bonus is also really good, and then the guard is nice as well. It means that she can run a more defensive build, and that's what they seem to be wanting to do with this weapon. They want her to be some kind of omni tank. The problem with that is that threats nowadays are just way too strong, right? And honestly, Norne just doesn't have enough here to really be able to fulfill that tank role. Even if she's fast enough not to get doubled, there's things like catcher balls where she's gonna get hit twice. There's things that are like brave weapons that are gonna hit her twice, right? And she just doesn't have a way to really mitigate enough damage. Stats are nice, but she needs like damage reduction or defensive specials or like hardy fire, right? Like that's what tanks need nowadays just to survive. And honestly, when you give her a refine like this where they are trying to put her into that tank role, I just think this isn't enough for her to be like to actually be able to fulfill that role in Ether Raids. And when it comes to other game modes, I really just don't see her being used at all. So I think if she does have a place, it's in Ether Raids offense, but I still think that's questionable. She's gonna need a ton of support. Honestly, I think this refine's good. It's like it's a solid refine. It's not bad, right? But it's just not amazing, and it doesn't really have a place in our current game modes. So overall, I think Norne fans shouldn't be disappointed, but at the same time, this isn't going to make her like an amazing archer. Okay, next, let's move on to my boy Dimitri. This is a refine I've been waiting for a very long time, and Brave Dimitri got such a good refine. I'm hoping that normal Dimitri can get something in that ballpark, right? So let's see what we got. We got attack plus 3. At start of combat, if his HP is less than or equal to 99%, or if foe's HP is greater than or equal to 75%, you get plus 4 to all stats and a guaranteed follow-up attack. So, this isn't the best start, right? Because essentially, base Dimitri, all he had was a guaranteed follow-up attack. That's it. So all he really got was a few more stats, and the condition is easier now. Not the best. Okay, let's check the refine. If unit initiates combat or foe's HP is greater than or equal to 75% at start of combat, plus 4 to all stats during combat, deals damage equal to 10% of unit's attack, so that's 10% true damage based off Dimitri's attack. He reduces damage from foe's attacks by 10% of his attack as well. So that is flat damage reduction based off his attack. And then he also reduces the percentage of foe's non-special reduces damage by X% skills, by 50%. So this is essentially having damage reduction, but not flat damage reduction, right? Like this is the kind you get from like Close Call or like Repel or whatever, right? Very similar to Dual Lips' original ability that he had in his weapon. So how good of a refine is this really? So 10% true damage based off your attack is decent. It's not bad. Like it's definitely something we like because it's not capped. but it's not nearly as high as many other units have, right? We look at something like Legendary Nana, she has 20%, and Brave Alm has 25%. So 10% is good, but it's not phenomenal. And then we have flat damage reduction. So flat damage reduction is extremely powerful. We all know that. We've all seen, Brave Dimitri or Asker just go off, being able to take 1,000,000 hits because of flat damage reduction. The thing is that they both have higher percentages. 10% is not a lot. And secondly, it's based off Dimitri's attack, not his defense. And the reason why this matters is because defense naturally reduces damage, right, from physical attacks. So when you put true defense on top of that, it stacks, which is what makes it so ridiculously good, right? In this case, attack is completely separate from defense, right, or resistance. So because of that, it's not as effective. Now the thing is, typically a unit will have a higher attack stat than their defense or resistance, especially in the case of this Dimitri, but I don't think it's going to be like crazy powerful. Like, you're not going to see normal Dimitri just like tanking entire teams. Part of that is because it's based off attack, and part of that is because it's not nearly high enough of a percentage. Now the final thing we have to talk about is the damage reduction part, which is very nice, right? This is kind of like a Legendary Nana thing, but it's only half of damage reduction instead of full. It's going to allow him to hit really hard, it's going to allow him to get some big damage in, right? Which is cool, but I don't know if it's enough, right? I don't know if this is enough to make Dimitri really stand out amongst his peers of Blue Lance Calves, because that is one of the most competitive weapon and movement types in the entire game. It's like probably the second or third, right? Like right below infantry swords. So I think this refine is good, right? It's a solid refine, but I don't think it's amazing. I think one of the big things they really need to do is give more percentage, right? They should have given him 20% true damage based off his attack so that he could hit really hard. And then maybe the damage reduction could have been 15% of his attack, or even 20%. I don't think it would have been broken by any means, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I think this is going to make Dimitri a lot more usable and fun, but I do just think he has a lot of problems. One being pretty slow with 29 base speed, even with Dragon Flowers and everything else. He's not the fastest unit, and he is relying on a guaranteed follow-up attack. So if he runs into like follow-up denial, and the unit has better speed than him, that's going away. Or if he just runs into a no follow-up unit, his double's going away. And without his double, he's really not going to be killing much, because he doesn't have slaying either, which means he doesn't have easy access to specials. So I think this is a solid refine for Dimitri, very good, but just not up to par compared to some of the more powerful Blue Lance Calves we have in the meta. And I do think he kind of got shafted a bit when compared to Claude as well. Okay, let's move on to our first remix with Peony. Okay, so we have Flower of Joy, grants rest +3, grants attack and speed +4 to any ally in the cardinal direction from unit during combat. If an ally is in a cardinal direction from unit, grants +4 to all stats to Peony during her combat. So the big change in this base weapon essentially is that she got +1 more attack and speed that she can give out to allies, and then she's also a bit better in combat, but honestly, that's nothing to write home about. You really don't want to be using your dancers in combat. Okay, next up, let's look at the actual refine itself. We have SR of Combat. If Peony's HP is greater than or equal to 25%, she gets another +4 to all stats during combat. She gets a guaranteed follow-up attack, and then she restores 7 HP to herself and allies in cardinal directions after combat. I'm gonna be honest, this is not a great weapon refine. The best thing in this entire refine is that she gives 1 more attack and speed to her allies. Other than that, it's just dumb. I don't know why they keep focusing on making dancers into offensive threats when that is really not what you want, right? You want as much support effects as you can get for Peony, and this weapon just makes her better at combat. It's just really not great. The +1 attack and speed I'll definitely take. I wish they would have made it different so that if she was in the cardinal direction of an ally, when they do combat, she heals them 7 HP after combat. That would have been way, way, way better. I really wish they would have done that. But let's move on to her preference dance, Gel Dream Plus, and check that out because there is some power there. So we have grants another action to the target ally, pretty typical dance thing. Grants attack, speed, defense, and res +4, so we get a small upgrade there. And the following stats to target ally and allies in cardinal directions of unit and target. So we get the formation buff, and we get a visible bonus, right? This is important, visible bonus of neutralizes penalties. So that is a buff that will be applied to that unit, and they will have that. And the reason why that's really important is because we have 2 dangerous threats on dark defense. We have Embla and we have Yu. Embla has a really annoying feud part of her severance skill, which makes it so you can't get support from allies, right? You can't have the drives, you can't have like flame behind you, it's not gonna work. But with this, because it's a visible buff, it will actually be on that unit themselves, and the feud will not cancel that out. That is really, really important because we have Yoon in the meta. And Yoon is throwing around penalties like it's nothing. She throws around penalties everywhere. And with this, what you can do is you can neutralize penalties on your Omni tank, And if you position Peony right and you dance from behind, you could even have a support ally within 2 spaces and dance that support ally. It will buff the tank and the support ally if they're in cardinal directions, and it will also remove their penalties because Yoon does look at the foe's penalties within 2 spaces to apply true damage. So in this way, Peony can actually be a very powerful support dancer now and offer a really powerful effect for the Dark Season. So I think this is actually an amazing remix. Her Refine is not great, but I think her remix does carry her, and that penalty neutralization is really good. Okay, let's move on to our next remix with Thrasir. We have Thrasir with Eye Finger, one of the weirdest names for a weapon ever, but let's just go with it. She's effective against dragon foes. If unit is within 3 spaces of an ally, grants +6 to all stats. The unit neutralizes effects that guarantees foes' follow-up attacks and units' follow-up attacks during combat, and after combat, she inflicts that -4 to all stats on her nearest ally through its next actions. So we have a big upgrade here in her base weapon. First of all, she's getting +2 to all stats here, so she's going from +4 to all stats to +6, which is really nice. But most importantly, she's getting full no follow-up, which is really big, because you really do need offensive no follow-up nowadays, and you really don't want to run the seal, because you want to get as many stats as possible. And you also don't always want to rely on the visible buff, because on defense there's a lot of ways to turn that off, like Elamine, right? So this will allow Thrasir to hit twice a majority of the time. Like, it's going to be very difficult to not have her hit twice, because she is quite fast. So this is a big upgrade here. But then we get to the Refined, and this is where it gets really crazy. She gets Slaying. That's right, she gets special cooldown -1, which is really strong, as you know, and that is like one of the biggest things she could have gotten. She also gets, if her HP is greater than 25%, another +4 to all stats during combat, so she's getting more stats, which is really good, and she neutralizes those bonuses to speed and res during combat, so she gets a low speed res. This is really good Refine. Now this isn't like a broken Refine, but it's very solid. It gave her pretty much everything she wanted. She got +6 to all stats more, so now she has +10 to all stats. She got full no follow-up, which she desperately needed, and she got low speed res, which means that she can get around those annoying bonuses on units she's attacking. So overall, this is already making Thrasir a lot stronger. But if we really want to see how powerful she can be, let's check out the remix for Killing Intent. So we have SR of combat if foe's HP is less than or equal to 99%, or if penalty is active on foe, inflicts speed and res -5 on foe during combat, and also if unit initiates combat, unit can make a follow-up attack before foe can counterattack. So this is almost exactly the same as it already was. We're essentially just getting some stats, which is always nice, and desperation effect, as long as there's a penalty on the foe, or their HP is less than or equal to 90%. But now let's look at the actual remix part. At start of turn, inflicts exposure on nearest foe within 5 spaces of unit, and foes within 2 spaces of those foes through their next actions. And now this is where it gets really crazy. So if you don't know, exposure is a debuff we got from Duo Thor. She's the first one to introduce it, and it's essentially +10 true damage per hit, which is really strong. It's really horrifying. But the thing is, not only does Thrasir give that, she also gets it within 5 spaces, which is massive. It's extremely difficult to bait outside of 5 spaces of range. Typically you're going to be in that 5 spaces. Sometimes you can get around it, but it's really not easy to do. And not only that though, it also spreads. So that means if you are using a save tank, it's going to hit your save unit no matter what, because within those 2 spaces, right? So it just really is extremely powerful, and it's going to make Thrasir hit way harder. But the big thing is that it also allows Thrasir to support her team, which is massive, because that's really what you want from a defensive mythic nowadays. You want them to either fulfill a very important role, like a nuke, like a far save, right, or like a dancer, but you also want them to offer support, and this is exactly what Thrasir is getting. This Refine and Remix is extremely powerful. Now, is it going to be game-breaking? I don't think so, but it's going to give Thrasir a very important place in the anima defense meta, which is important, right? It's going to allow her to be usable again, and it's going to allow her to actually be quite strong. Overall, I'm very impressed with Thrasir's remix, and I'm very happy with it. They pretty much gave her everything she needed, and a little bit more. Now let's move on to Catria. So we have Valentia Catria with Astra Blade. We have grants attack +3. If unit's attack is greater than foe's defense, deals damage equal 50% of unit's attack minus foe's defense. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your attack, you're going to subtract their defense, and then 50% of that difference is going to come as true damage. That's right, true damage. Before it was a boost, which is very different. So typically the way boosts work is that they can be nullified if the defense or resistance is high enough. This is going to actually allow Catria to do true damage, which is massive. That's extremely powerful. But then she has more, right? This is still her base weapon too. If unit initiates combat or spends 2 spaces of an ally, she has +4 to all the stats during combat. So she gets a nice little stat boost there, which is nice, really good. Let's jump to her Refine. The Refine has unit can move to a space within 2 spaces of an ally within 2 spaces. So this is a massive warping effect, right? We've seen this on Harmonic Sonya, Ashe gives this with her Preference C skill, we've also seen this on Summer Tana, right? This is a very strong and powerful effect. It's going to allow her to be extremely mobile and deadly. But then we also have at start of combat, if units HP is greater than 25%, she gets another +4 to all stats during combat. Nothing massive, right? Just getting some more stats that she needs. But she also gets an additional attack plus X to unit and inflicts defense minus X on foe during combat. And X equals number of space moved times 2 by whoever initiates combat. So this is very similar to a clash effect, right? Like attack speed clash that we had on Brave Seliph. And it's going to give up to 8 more stats. Now, this is really, really strong because essentially it is doubling down on the attack. It doesn't seem that way because it says on foe's defense, right? But really what you're getting is you're getting up to +8 attack for Catria, and you're inflicting -8 defense on the foe, which is effectively +16 attack. And when you add in the other +4 to all stats, and the other +4 to all stats, you get +24 attack on Catria. At max attack, she has 71 attack, and then you're adding 28 more just from her weapon. That's ridiculous. That's not even including skills, right? So this Catria is going to hit really, really hard. She can just do a ton of damage thanks to her weapon, and she has a very good stat line, very offensively spread. In all honesty, this is a very powerful refine, and it definitely makes Catria into a scary nuke. Okay, let's move on to our final refine of the batch. We have New Year's Lethe. So we have Grant Speed +3. If unit speed greater than foe speed, we get deals damage equals 70% of difference between stats, max 7. So that's up to 7 true damage based off speed. Then we also have speed-based damage reduction. And then we also get +5 attack and speed if she's either solo or she initiates combat. And then we have a Cavalry Beast transformation. So the only real change here from her base weapon before is that she's getting 5 attack and speed. It's not the best, I'm not gonna lie. Honestly, typically you get 6 attack and speed at the very least, or you get +4 to all stats, right? So you're getting more defensive res, so it's making her bulkier. They also didn't remove the cap from her true damage, which is really, really bad. I don't know why they keep doing this. They did this with Altina as well. That amount of true damage just doesn't really equate nowadays. You need it to be able to scale infinitely, and the fact that it can't is a big downside for this. So we have our actual refine. If a skill compares unit speed to foes or ally speed, treats unit speed as granted +10. So that's essentially phantom speed, right? It's just going to make it easier for her to get that damage reduction and also the true damage from her base effect. And then we also have at start of combat, if unit HP is greater than or equal to 25%, +5 attack and speed. Once again, I don't know why it's not +6 or like +4 to all stats. Kind of weird to me, to be honest. And then she gets full no follow-up though, which is really strong. So that's a very powerful effect for her to get. So overall, if we look at Lethe, we have like true damage based off speed, but it's capped. We have damage reduction, which is good, but it's not as strong as it was when she came out. We have +10 attack and speed, which is decent, but honestly, she might have been better off with like +8 to all stats so that she would have more bulk, so that she can actually play that, mixed phase role better. We have phantom speed, which is nice once again, but not amazing. Like it's a good effect, but it's not like something you really want taking up like real estate on your refine. And then lastly, we have full no fall, which is really, really good. That's honestly like probably the best thing she got. This is gonna allow her to be a pretty powerful bruiser. She can run something like speed defense near trace in her B slot and like speed smoke in her C slot to double up on that damage reduction, and it's gonna allow her to be pretty good. She's gonna be able to do some damage, but honestly that true damage being uncapped really does hold her back a lot. I think this refine is good. Like it's a solid refine, but it could have been way better. Like all they really needed to do was uncap the true damage, right? Make it like 10%, and then also probably just give her more stats. Okay, with all that said, who won the refine war for this month? I'm gonna have to give to Thrasir. I think Thrasir is easily the best refine in this batch by far, especially because we're including the remix as well. Thrasir is easily going to go up in the S tier. She's going to be a powerful Anima Mythic now, offering support and dealing very solid damage thanks to the slaying and the damage from exposure and the full no fault, which is going to allow her to really get in there, get those doubles, and make sure she doesn't get doubled as well, which will increase her survivability. In S also, we are going to have Valentia Catria. I think this is a powerful refine. They just gave her a ton of ways to pump up her attack, which is what she wants, right? She's completely focused on her attack and doing that damage, and the fact that they changed it from a boost damage to a true damage is massive. Under that, we're going to have Peony and Dimitri in A tier. Peony, honestly, her refine is terrible. It's a horrible refine. The best part of it is the +1 attack speed, which is not saying much. But the remix to her dance is big. That is really, really powerful. It's going to allow us to counter things like Embla and Yoon much better, which is important because those two are probably the biggest threats in Dark Season right now. When it comes to Dimitri, I'm going to also put him in A tier. I think he's kind of like in the middle between A and B tier. His refine is good. It gives him the stuff he wants, right? Like true damage and then flat damage reduction, which is nice. And also the damage reduction piercing, which is cool. But I just don't think it gives enough of it. I think that he needed more true damage and probably more flat damage reduction as well, just so that he could act more as a bruisey Lance Cav. It's just so competitive in that weapon and movement type combo that it's going to be difficult for Dimitri to stand out, especially as a slower Cav too. That's one of the biggest things, right? If your speed is that bad, it's difficult to really rely on just guaranteed follow-up attacks nowadays. Under that, we're going to have Lethe and Norne in B. New Year's Lethe got a decent refine. It definitely gave her some more power. I think the full null follow-up is really what carries it, to be honest. After that, we have Norne. I think Norne got a good refine. They gave her a lot of stats. They gave her some nice defensive effects, right? Like that guard and the healing after combat, and gave her a good amount of stats so that she can actually, keep up with the newer units of this generation. But even so, I feel like she just doesn't have enough to fulfill that role of an omni-tank archer, right? And then lastly, we have Sigrun, and I think Sigrun just got completely screwed. This is a terrible weapon in my opinion. You're just not going to really want to use it ever. It doesn't really fit into any role or any game mode well. I think you're better off using the Arcane Lance. With that said, that's my thoughts on the refines for this month. Overall, mixed batch. I think we got some really solid refines, some decent refines. Nothing too amazing, I'd say. Thrasir is by far the best. But even then, she's not like a game breaker like something like Legendary Ellie would, Yoon, or Brave Dimitri, right? But now I'd love to hear from you. Which refine is your favorite? Are you happy with this batch of refines, or maybe you're a bit disappointed? I'd love to hear about it in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. This has been Oblivion. I'll catch you all later.